Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, I want to share a story with you. It's a timeless tale about a king, his mentor, and a mistake that changed everything. It's a story about anger, regret, and the kind of wisdom that can only grow with time. Once upon a time, in a beautiful and prosperous kingdom, there lived a young king named David. He was a good ruler, but much of his success was thanks to his mentor, a wise and gentle man named Edward. For years, their partnership was the cornerstone of the kingdom's peace and abundance. The people were happy, the harvests were plentiful, and the future seemed bright. But even the most peaceful kingdoms faced trials. One year, the land was struck by an unexpected and severe food crisis. The granaries, once overflowing, began to empty. Panic started to creep into the hearts of the people. The cause: a simple yet devastating error in a weather forecast made by none other than Edward. He had predicted a mild season, but instead, a harsh drought descended upon the land, withering the crops in the fields. King David, watching his people suffer, was consumed by a blinding rage. All the years of good counsel, all the moments of shared wisdom, were forgotten in an instant. In his fury, he saw only one person to blame. "This is your fault," he roared at his old mentor. His words were like daggers, sharp and cruel. Without a moment of hesitation, driven by his anger, King David banished Edward from the kingdom forever. Imagine Edward's heartbreak. After dedicating his life to serving the kingdom and its young king, he was cast out, disgraced. But Edward was a man of profound inner peace. He didn't argue or protest. With a heavy heart but a calm spirit, he accepted the king's decree, packed a small bag, and walked away from the life he had always known. He journeyed to a distant, quiet village, far from the politics and pressures of the royal court. There, he shed his title of royal advisor and became a simple farmer, tilling the earth and living a humble life. But true wisdom can't be hidden. Edward's gentle nature and insightful advice soon shone through. He helped his new neighbors with their problems, offered guidance on their crops, and listened with a patient ear. Before long, the villagers came to love and respect the quiet old farmer who seemed to understand the world so deeply. He had lost his title, but he had not lost his purpose. Back in the palace, the passing of time began to work its slow magic on King David. The initial heat of his anger cooled, replaced by a growing, hollow ache of regret. The crisis had eventually passed, but the king's spirit had not healed. He found himself facing difficult decisions, complex problems that he and Edward would have once tackled together. He missed Edward's calming presence, his thoughtful perspective, and the gentle way he would steer him toward the wiser path. David realized his grave error. He had let a moment of intense emotion cloud his judgment, and in doing so had severed a bond that was truly priceless. He had acted not as a wise king, but as a petulant child. The shame of his actions weighed heavily on him. He knew he had to find Edward to make amends. But how? Edward had vanished without a trace. So, the king devised a clever test, a challenge that only a mind as unique as Edward's could solve. He sent a single, empty clay jar to every village in his kingdom. With each jar came a royal decree: return this jar to the palace filled with wisdom. It was an impossible riddle, designed to baffle ordinary minds. Village after village was stumped. How do you fill a jar with something you can't touch or see? The jars were returned empty or filled with scrolls of proverbs, none of which satisfied the king. Finally, the the clay jar arrived in the small, distant village where Edward lived. The village elders were perplexed, but when they showed the jar and the king's message to Edward, a gentle smile spread across his face. He understood the king's true intention immediately. It wasn't a riddle for the kingdom, it was a message for him. Edward took the jar and a small pumpkin seed. He placed the seed inside the jar and carefully set it down in his garden. Day after day, he tended to the pumpkin vine, watering it and ensuring it received plenty of sunlight. The small pumpkin inside the jar began to grow, slowly but surely, until it grew so large that it filled the entire space within the clay walls, perfectly conforming to its shape. It was impossible to remove the pumpkin without breaking the jar. He then sent the jar back to the palace. When King David saw it, his breath caught in his throat. He stared at the pumpkin, perfectly encased within the clay. It was a masterpiece of patience and natural wisdom. In that moment, he knew only Edward could have conceived of such an elegant, living solution to his abstract puzzle. It was a message back to him. True wisdom needs time and the right environment to grow. Overcome with remorse and a glimmer of hope, King David journeyed to the village himself. He found Edward tending to his garden, looking older, perhaps, but more at peace than ever. The king dismounted from his horse, his royal robes seeming out of place in the humble setting. He approached his former mentor, his head bowed, and apologized with a sincerity that came from the very depths of his soul. He admitted his fault, his foolishness, and the profound regret he felt. He asked Edward to forgive him and to return to the palace, not just as an advisor, but as a friend. This beautiful story serves as a powerful reminder for all of us. Anger is a powerful, fleeting emotion that can lead to permanent damage. It clouds our judgment and pushes us to make choices we will later regret. Patience and understanding, on the other hand, are the soils in which true wisdom grows. They allow us to see situations clearly, to make wiser choices, and to build stronger, more resilient relationships. When faced with anger, let's try to remember Edward and his pumpkin, and give ourselves the time and space to let a wiser solution grow. Thank you so much for watching and for letting me share this story with you. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more stories and reflections. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, take care.